Tonight on Bay Area Psychology, we have a special treat. Naomi Tickle, author of It's All in the Face, joins us to discuss physiognomy, the relationship of facial structure to personality. In my research for tonight's show, I came across a PBS special, The Death of Garfield, which illustrates the first legal use of the insanity plea. The lawyer representing the man accused of assassinating President Garfield introduces testimony provided by an early neurologist who identified the facial structure of the defendant as evidence of his insanity. Let's take a look.
That they saw in him, but they didn't associate that with insanity. Only a few people did.
Among the few who saw insanity in Guiteau's behavior were the neurologists, young scientists whose strange new theories challenged established medical notions.
The inequality of the two sides of the head is determined by considering the head from 3 points of view: from the front, from the back, and from the top, where under normal circumstances the two sides should be practically equal. The most noticeable asymmetry is the one presenting the front view, just as the prisoner faces you. If I take the line from A to C to B, that is on the left side, that is the one to which I referred as being 3 times more asymmetrical under normal circumstances than the line ADB.
Suppose that to be an accurate depiction of the prisoner's head. In what way would that differ from the ordinary class of heads that you see in the community everywhere?
I would say that it is far beyond the ordinary degree of asymmetry.
Well, Dr. Spitzka, what would you tell the jury in your own way is the particular phase or character of insanity in this case as observed by you?
I would say that would be very difficult for me to render clear to any jury not composed of experts. I can simply say that the marked feature of this man's insanity is a tendency to delusive or insane opinion and to the creation of morbid and fantastical projects. And while I have no other evidence than the expression on his face, I should have no doubt that he was also a moral imbecile, or rather a moral monstrosity.
Welcome back. Well, that was strongly stated, wasn't it? Tonight, Naomi will provide us with the results of contemporary statistical measurements revealing shorthand ways to identify personality traits with brief observation. So welcome, Naomi. I want to thank you for being with us tonight on Bay Area Psychology.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's great to be here.
I'm wondering, when you were looking at this, which is a depiction of the trial, which was in the late 1800s, what kind of thoughts you might have had?
Well, it's very, very interesting because in the asymmetry of the face, you will find there are a lot of what we call mood swings. And so it indicates a person can first swing one way or the other. And they almost seem like two people at times.
Huh.
But the beauty of it is that when we recognize it in the approach that we use for physiognomy, it's personality is a modern day form of physiognomy.
Okay.
And as we look at the symmetry of their face, we'll say, well, first this person could be one way and it can be another way. So they're very complex people. And they can handle a lot of complex situations. And so they do appear like two people. And once they understand, once a person who has these tendencies, once they understand what it's about, they can actually normalize some of those swing moods, as we call them, in a way that they become more aware of it. It brings it up to a more conscious awareness when they realize where the swing moods are coming. Say, for example, somebody is one moment extremely tolerant and the next moment intolerant.
Uh-huh.
Well, then being more aware of that, when they find those mood swings coming on, they say, okay, I can feel this mood swing coming on. I'm going to take myself away with it from this and go and do something completely different. So it then starts to stabilize them.
So one of the advantages to the study of physical and physical shape and physical type would be just information, if nothing
That's
else,
right.
for me to learn about how I present in the world. And I would guess also information about how you present. In other words, when I meet other people,
Yes.
There's advantages to being able to see certain things that might be, your research might have shown have been typical over time to indicate certain personality traits.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we all read faces. We look at faces and we look at the expressions, and we notice that and react to that, and we make our own assumptions of that, and then we look at the structure of the face, and that in itself will tell us something else. And we have all sorts of descriptors that we've used, whereas people are British have a tight upper lip, or they are nosy people, or they're clone head, or they're highbrow. We have all those expressions, and what we're recognizing is shape and form and relating it to behavior.
Okay.
And we do know this at some gut level, but what this study does is it brings it to a more conscious awareness and form. And actually this goes back, I mean, it gets its roots from Lavater, who did extensive studies on the relationship between structure and behavior. And it goes way back even to Aristotle.
Right.
And it was Edward Jones, back in the 1920s, who was a judge in the Los Angeles Court District. He was the first person to research this and bring it into a usable form. And in a usable form, what we mainly use these studies for is careers. Now that may sound careers from a facial structure. Yes, we'll see, if we see a typical person, say an engineer, we'll see a certain shape and form to their face.
Like what, for example? What are common engineer-like physical traits?
Well, typically their forehead tends to be fairly flat, which indicates information. And then the eyebrows may curve down, and that indicates somebody who's good at organization. And then there's sometimes pyramids, not sometimes, there are pyramids at the top of the eyebrow. The eyebrow forms a pyramid at the top.
Huh.
And they're good in design. So now what we do is we cluster the traits together.
Okay.
So when we're looking at the whole profile of a person, we cluster the different traits together, and it describes, well, this is an engineer, this is a graphic artist, this is a nurse.
Okay.
And when people discover this about themselves, they say, yeah, that's right.
So it actually reminds me of probably one of the reasons, one of the ways that we quickly categorize or stereotype people too, in the sense that, oh, this person looks nurse-like.
Yes,
You know, it's
exactly.
kind of our expectations what they should look like. And I know prior to the show we were talking about, you said people in the theater have purchased your book for learning about facial characteristics and types that would match characters they might play, or to make those things congruent.
That's right, and cartoonists as well. When they, like, we think about a clown. And now, if they put a clown with a pointed nose and not a rounded nose, it would look entirely different.
Yes.
And we respond to it in a different way. And so it gives us some form to refer to. Oh, is this what we're responding to?
Huh.
And we also look at the challenge that people have today in finding careers. I mean, we change our careers anything from 7 to 10 times. And according to one article I read recently, about 80 to 90% of the people are in careers that don't work for them.
Okay.
And they're like square pegs in a round hole. And with the downsizing, the reorganization of companies now, the questions are out there, what am I going to do next? So they go out and they take all these different tests, because the results we come up with are very similar to the Myers-Briggs test.
Huh, how about that?
But it takes it a step further. This is a step beyond there, in the sense that in the Myers-Briggs test and ours, we come up with the careers, but then what else does it tell you about that person? And so when we're looking at the face and we do the profiles, we're looking at 65 different profiles in the face, or the areas in the face. And it gives us a blueprint, so to speak. And it indicates a way people process information, respond to situations, and so on. And then once we've done all this profile, we can actually cluster the different traits together. And it comes up with about 92% accuracy.
Okay, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that came up, I was discussing this with a friend prior to the show, and she said, well, if you could have that kind of accuracy, then why can't we identify, for example, criminals? She just got through taking a self-defense class. And she thought, well, then is there ways that we could be walking down the street and be able to identify people that might pose a threat to us versus not, or that sort of thing? And I don't know, I know a judge, you had said, did this original study, so depending on who he was studying, there may have been several people who fit into that category in his studies. So I just thought I'd throw that out to you since I had no idea how to answer that question.
Well, actually, back in 1963, they did do those studies in San Quentin prison.
Okay.
In fact, if you look in if you go to the museum there in San Quentin, you will see how they used to identify people by the length of their arm, the shoulders, and things like that. And that's in the historical part of San Quentin. And so in 1963, they did make these studies using physiognomy as a way of determining was there any relationship between crime and the structure of the face and the body. And they felt there was definitely some correlation, although nothing was really concrete there. But in the same token, if we say somebody has a high temper, or they're very inconsiderate, or they don't think, they act before they think, we tend to put ourselves into categories, well, this is how they are and we can't be anything different. That's not true. We do have choice. So somebody could have a high temper and be aware of that and remove themselves from the situation where the high temper comes up.
So part of this has to do with, just because we may have a certain facial structure, body structure, certainly doesn't condemn us to act that out.
No way.
I mean, certainly part of being tested, for example, with you would be learning that information and then being able to do something with it.
That's right.
Let's take a look at a famous face. I think we have a few brief minute or so before our break, and I thought we could take a look and you could tell us what you see. Okay. And we'll see how this works. Oh, here we have a famous face.
Bill Gates, yes.
What do you see?
Very famous. He's, as I see him, he loves information. He's, again, when we look at the engineering profile, he certainly has that kind of profile and fits into that well. He likes to get to the bottom line, get to the point. You know, what are you trying to say? He's more of an action-driven person. At the same time, he's also very generous with his taking his time, with the way he interacts with people. And
how do you know that?
He's fairly tolerant. Well, the lower lip would indicate, the fullness of the lower lip indicates generosity.
That's right, I read that in your book.
And the eyes, which are wider set, tend to be, he's a much more tolerant person, can handle a lot of things at once, take on several different jobs at one time. Versus, say, somebody who has eyes that are closer together. They'd be more suited to, say, someone who's an accountant.
Ah, okay.
Whereas much more focused in on the specific project.
Okay, well, let's take a break. We'll give our audience time to let that sink in.
Okay.
Stay with us. When we return, you'll learn more about what your face might be telling others. Stay tuned.